love Christmas. And I just got to tell you, one of the things that I really love most about Christmas is the gifts. I mean, honestly, like we can all say like we like gifts, that's okay. Who doesn't love to receive a good gift? But I have to also tell you, for me, it's not just that I like getting gifts. I also really love to give gifts. Like it's like, you know, we all have different love languages. Gift giving is like, gifts is my love language. And so I love when I get it right. Like when I know someone well and I know what they like, I know what maybe they are asking for. Maybe I think of like, this is what they need and they don't even know yet. And I can tell when I get it right, when I get the perfect gift, not because someone says something to me, but you know when you get it right because you can see it on their face. And if you've ever done this, if you've ever just nailed the gift, you know exactly what I'm talking about. When they open up the package, their face just lights up. And while gifts are great, let's just be honest, when it comes to Christmas, they're also part of the problem. Because at times we can just become so focused as people on gifts. Like, am I going to get what I want for Christmas? Am I going to get someone what they want for Christmas? And even beyond that, there's the shopping and then the wrapping and then the second guessing. Like, did I get it all right? Checking the list. Did I forget anyone? Did I forget anything? Even as I talk about this right now, for some of you, your anxiety is increasing, thinking, oh my goodness, I only have a few more hours to get this all right, to get everything ready and prepared for Christmas. Now, I do want to say this. I'm not trying to be the Grinch here, right? Like, I'm telling you, I love gifts. I love to give gifts. I think when we look at the Christmas story, we can't escape the reality that gifts are just a part of the narrative. Matter of fact, in the Gospel of Matthew, which is one of the four books that tell us about the life and the teaching and the ministry of Jesus, there is an account of Jesus' birth. And in Matthew's Gospel, we're told that wise men come from the east and they bring Jesus gifts. Gifts many of us know all about. Like, what are the gifts that they bring? Gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Like that last one, you need to say it with some gravitas, like myrrh. It just sounds better that way. Yeah, like gifts are just a part of Christmas, an inescapable part of Christmas. But here's what I want us to understand tonight. The earthly gifts that we yearn for, the gifts that we desire to give others, pale in comparison to the gift God gave us through his Son, Jesus Christ. At Christmas, we acknowledge and celebrate the birth of Jesus. But Christmas is about more than just celebrating Jesus. Christmas is also an opportunity for us to recognize the impact of Jesus' life. Because he was born into this world, because of what he did on the cross, it makes it possible for all of us to find peace in life's most important relationships. Because of Jesus and his birth, it's possible for us to find peace with God. Matter of fact, we just sang a song before I came on stage, a famous song, "Oh Holy Night." I could hear you guys backstage singing it. I know it's a song that you love. One of my favorite lines of that song really captures the heart of this message. The lyric is, his law is love, and his gospel, the good news of Jesus, is the gospel, the good news of peace. And what Jesus ushers in on Christmas morning is the pathway for, once again, for us to be restored back into right relationship with God. In the New Testament, there is a lot of letters that are written to different churches that have sort of sprung up and around Jerusalem and that region in ancient Rome. And the Apostle Paul is really known and credited with writing 2/3 of the New Testament, 2/3 of these letters that have gone out to churches. And I want us to look at what he says in Romans chapter 5, a letter that he wrote to the church in Rome, really helps us understand what we're talking about here. Paul says this in verse 1, "Therefore, since we've been made right in God's sight by faith, we have peace with God." Peace, it's possible, he goes on, because of what Jesus Christ, our Lord, has done for us. You see, Jesus went to the cross. He gave up his life that made it possible for you and for me to stand before God pure and blameless. And the thing is, maybe you're wondering, well, why do we need this? Like, why do I need Jesus? Like, what does what he did matter for me? And here's what the Bible tells us, that all of us have a bent in our lives towards sin. That all of us have a desire to sort of pursue the things that we want in this world, even things that conflict with the kind of life that God calls us to live. Maybe another way to say it is the natural gravitational pull of our lives is to move further and further away from God. And what Jesus does is he actually bridges that gap for us. His blood, Scripture says, wipes away our sins and restores for us peace with God. All of it is made possible because of the precious gift of Jesus on Christmas. But the declaration of Christmas is about more than just God creating a way for us to find peace with him. You know, earlier in our service, we had a little fun with a game. And again, like they mentioned it, it's a game that you probably know, you probably played before. Maybe it's at a family Christmas party or a work party, or maybe you've actually gotten one of those gifts that's within a gift, Has anyone ever had that experience before, or participated in that before? Okay, 2 of us. Okay, the rest of you, you got to see it, right? Like, so we understand the concept, right? Like you unwrap a layer and inside there is something else, something good. You unwrap a layer, inside there is something else and something good. That so wonderfully, in my mind, illustrates what happens at Christmas. Because we have this gift we talk about. Jesus came to restore and bring about peace in our relationship with God, but also there's gifts within the gifts. Now, it's important for me to say before we get to some of these other gifts that these other gifts aren't more important than the first. Again, the gift of Jesus is the greatest gift that the world has ever seen or experienced or taken hold of. This is the primary gift, but every other gift is only possible because of the original. And that's what I want us to talk about. You see, the truth is, when Jesus enters into humanity, it doesn't just create a way for us to find peace with God, it also paves the way for us to experience peace within ourselves. Now, it's important to remember, as we talk about peace, that worldly peace is not the same thing as biblical peace. Worldly peace is the absence of conflict, it's the absence of suffering. But biblical peace is something entirely different. Biblically speaking, peace comes from this inner, deep down, soul gratifying level of peace. And maybe a different way to say it is it's the kind of peace that is not the byproduct of circumstances, but it's the peace that comes from being in right relationship with God. In a letter that Paul wrote to the church in Philippi, he's encouraging a group of people who are struggling with experiencing peace. They're struggling with some of the worries that they have. Many worries like you and I would experience in life. And this is what Paul says. He says, look, when you go to God in prayer, when you surrender your worries to God in prayer, verse 7, then you will experience God's peace. The peace that exceeds anything we can understand. Again, God's peace is different than worldly peace. His peace will guard your hearts and minds as you live in Christ Jesus. When I start to think of what godly peace is like, there's this image of a hurricane that comes to mind. And for most of us, we've never experienced a hurricane unless you've lived on the East Coast or down in the South. Maybe you've been firsthand and had that experience before. But for most of us, we've never been in a hurricane, but we understand how it works. Above the surface, it's just chaos. There's wind, there's rain. I mean, it's just a powerful force that is moving. But the fascinating thing to me about hurricanes is when you actually get below the surface, when you get down deep below, what you'll notice is there's fish just swimming around in the water, completely oblivious to everything that's happening above them. It's like they have peace even in the midst of chaos. And that's what I think biblical peace is. It's peace in the midst of turmoil. It's peace that's not dependent upon circumstances. There's a pastor and an author named J. Oswald Sanders, and he put it this way. He would say that peace is not the absence of trouble. Again, that's worldly peace. I'm at peace when there is no trouble. I'm at peace when there is no suffering. Sanders says, look, peace is not the absence of trouble. Instead, peace is the presence of God. And from Sanders' perspective, as long as we keep our focus on God, we can experience inner peace. But that's part of what makes it so difficult, right? Where when it comes to finding peace with God, that's a one-time decision. But when it comes to experiencing inner peace, it's a daily decision. Like every single day, we have to think, okay, how do I orient my life towards God? How do I make sure the decisions I make are honoring God? And when I'm at peace with God, and when my decisions are honoring God, then makes it possible for me to experience inner peace. And the crazy thing is, when we find peace within ourselves, peace that comes first and foremost from our relationship with God, it puts us in a place, in a posture to experience peace with others. And I don't know about you, but I feel like in the world that we live in today, this is sorely needed. Like it feels like everywhere I look, people are fighting with each other. Everywhere I look, there's conflict and there's strife. No one seems to get along. No one seems to listen to anyone else. There doesn't seem to be any peace. But Christmas is a declaration that peace with others is possible. Now, it's hard work, right? Because when it comes to God, we can deal with God. When it comes to what's going on in ourselves, we can deal with it ourselves. But when it comes to others, the truth is there's so many of us who just prefer not to engage in this altogether. But here's what I need us to understand. Jesus didn't just come to reconcile our relationship with God. He also calls us to live at peace with others. We read this in Romans chapter 12, verse 18. Do all that you can. Do all that you can do to live in peace with everyone. Now, even as I say that, I just need to acknowledge, we will probably never be at a place where we are at peace with everyone. Notice it doesn't say, you must be there. No, like whatever you can do. Do what you can do. I think what Paul is getting at here is simply this. If the ball is in your court, if you can do something about it, then you have a responsibility to seek peace with that other person, to find healing in your relationship. And this is why it's important. And again, because most of us, when it comes to the conflict with others, we'd rather not deal with it, but this is why it's important. It's not only your relationship with someone else that's at stake, but it's also your peace with God. Now, I don't know if you can be at peace with God if you're not seeking peace with other people. And to live a life, which a lot of us choose to do, to live lives that are filled with bitterness, to live lives that are filled with strife, to cut all ties off with people with no chance to restore peace, is to essentially say you will gladly accept God's forgiveness, you will gladly accept His mercy and His grace and His peace, but you're just unwilling to give what you have received from God to someone else. And friends, that's not the kind of life that God calls us to live. Now, there's a fascinating story that I think really helps us kind of understand this concept and the power of being at peace with other people. How many of you guys have seen this picture before? You guys seen that picture before? What picture is that? It's the Last Supper. Okay, bonus points. Who painted that picture? Leonardo da Vinci. Okay, great. You've passed. This is what's interesting. The legend has it that when Da Vinci was painting this famous picture, he was in an ongoing feud with a fellow painter he despised. Everybody knew about it. They didn't get along. They didn't see eye to eye. And as Da Vinci started painting this picture, he had a brilliant idea. Leonardo thought, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the face of my enemy and I'm going to paint his face on Judas. That way, everyone who knows about our feud will not see Judas, they will see my enemy. And furthermore, throughout history, when people look at the Last Supper, they will associate my mortal enemy with Judas. He thought this was brilliant, and so that's what he did. He painted his enemy as Judas, and then Da Vinci would go on to paint the other disciples. Finally, it came time for him to paint the face of Jesus. And as Da Vinci started to paint Jesus, he struggled to get it right. He'd paint it, it just didn't look like what he wanted it to look like, and so he'd erase it, and he'd try again, and he would paint the picture, and it wasn't coming out like he had hoped for, and so he'd erase it, and just over and over again, this went, and over time, you can imagine, Da Vinci just got really frustrated and confused. Like, it wasn't hard for him to paint. It wasn't hard for him to paint Judas or any of the other disciples, but why was it in this moment was he having such difficulty to paint the face of Jesus? And then it hit him. That he realized that as long as he had this broken relationship with this other painter, then he would never be able to see Jesus. And so again, legend has it that Da Vinci went to this other painter, made amends with their relationship, went back to this famous painting and removed the face of this other painter from Judas, painted another face on Judas's head, probably his father-in-law. I'm just kidding. Maybe, we don't really know. But he painted another face on Judas, and it was at that moment that he was finally able to see Jesus, to paint Jesus and complete his masterpiece. And I hear that story, and when I read that story this past week, I thought, how many of us find ourselves in the same place as Da Vinci? Like, how many of us here tonight, like, we have people in our life that we are just not experiencing peace with. These fractured relationships. There's brokenness, and with brokenness comes pain. And I just wonder, like Da Vinci, do some of us need to go out and to seek peace and perhaps reconciliation? And until we are willing to make those steps, we're not going to experience peace with God. I also wonder how many of us are here tonight and we're just, for being honest, inside there's just turmoil. Like, we would long for, we would desire nothing more than to experience peace within ourselves, but we can't. It just feels like every day there's something new, that there's a constant battle that's happening within. I really believe that there's some of us who are sitting here tonight, and that's exactly the place that you're in. And here's what I want all of us to understand. And I think the truth is, if we're looking at our lives and depending on where we are in relationship with God, there's probably some of us who care more about experiencing internal peace. There's probably some of us who care more about experiencing peace with others than we do really about peace with God. But here's what we need to understand. The peace that you and I long for can only be found by first making peace with God. It's where it all begins. It's why Christmas is so important. And so I just wonder if you're here tonight, and tonight is the night that you need to make peace with God through Jesus. I wonder if tonight's the night that you have to choose to place your hope and your trust in Him. It's a very scary thing to do. I mean, to follow Jesus is to essentially acknowledge, I'm going to surrender my life, my wants, my will to you, Lord. But I do that because I know that's how you made me to be, but I also know that because the life that you have marked out for me, the life that God has created for each and every one of us, truly is better than any life that we could ever build for ourselves. And what I want you to understand is until you're willing to take that step of faith, until you're willing to take the act of surrender, to place your trust in Jesus, you will never understand the gift and the significance of Christmas. And you'll never experience the kind of life that you were meant to live. As we wrap up services tonight in just a few moments, I'm actually going to be up front here at the stage. And I'm going to be up here with some of our prayer team people. And here's the thing. If you're wrestling tonight, if you want to talk with someone about what does it mean to accept Jesus, maybe you're sitting there and you're like, no, this is exactly, Lord, I need you in my life. I want you, when we close up service, to come forward. Because I would love the opportunity to talk with you. Our team, we would love the opportunity to pray with you. We would love to celebrate and come alongside the fact that you have received the gift that Christmas declares. You know, one of our traditions as a church on Christmas Eve is we sing the song that's really become synonymous with Christmas. What song is it? Silent Night. And we sing that song in chorus with churches around the world. A song that declares that in the stillness of a moment, the gift of Jesus came into the world. But people don't just love the song for the lyrics. People love the song for the candlelit moment that comes with it. And what I want us to understand is, as we do every year, as we light these candles, the candle is more than just tradition. The candle is more than just a great photo op or a nice aesthetic. The candle in that moment ties directly to words that the Apostle John wrote in the first chapter of his gospel. This is what John says in chapter 1, verse 4. The Word, and he's speaking of Jesus here. He says, Jesus gave life to everything that was created. And his life brought light to everyone. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness can never extinguish it. That the light of the world stepped into this world and brought light to all mankind. That's what Christmas is about. And throughout the New Testament, there are words that are used in unison to describe Jesus. It's peace and light. That when the light entered the world, so did peace enter the world. And so as a church, again, every year we gather together and we take a moment and we light our candles. And we celebrate the significance of the birth of Jesus. That because of this light, life and light enter into all humanity. And that from one candle, from one person, spread the light of the world. And so right now I'm going to invite our ushers to come forward. And they'll light your candles. You know, when I think of this moment, it reminds me of the impact that it's had on my life. You see, a long time ago, someone I don't know was touched by the life and the light of Jesus. And that person was willing to live the kind of life that reflects the goodness of God. It was willing to talk about and to share the life of Jesus with other people who received that light and shared it with someone else who shared it with someone else. And I'm here today because of their faithfulness. Many of you are here today because of the faithfulness of the people who've come before us. That the light continues to spread. Thank you. And it fills this room. And in just a moment, as we sing this song together, here's what I'm going to ask of you. I'm going to ask not that you would just sing the words, but that you would look around you. And that you would notice in the stillness of this moment, that the light that fills this room reminds us of the peace that we have in our relationship with God and our relationship within ourselves and others that's made possible because of Jesus. But at the same time as we sing this song, may the light remind us of our responsibility to go out and share Jesus with others.